We're going to be discussing here on stage from platforms to personalization, the changing face of finance. To talk about this subject, ladies and gentlemen, we have the author of the book, The Great Transition. The Personalization of Finance is here. Dirk Kovacevich, the retired chairman and CEO of Wells Fargo, said about this publication, Emmanuel's book is a must-read for bankers and financial services intermediaries who do not want to be disintermediated. That's what he said. So, let me tell you this about the author. He is a global thought leader about the future of finance. He is listed as a top 10 global influencer in the FinTech Power 50 list for 2021 and 2022. He's also an entrepreneur, a writer, and a model train enthusiast. And his real passion? Travel. Travel is his real passion. That's what keeps him going. So far, he's visited 111 countries, and he has the intention to see them all. So that's what he is really passionate about. So ladies and gentlemen, please give a really warm welcome to the one and only Emmanuel Daniel. Welcome to the stage.
Here we go. I wrote this book and I had it published last year and launched in New York. The foreword was written by Barney, the congressman who co-authored the Dodd-Frank Act. And it was wonderful to be able to discuss many of the issues with Barney. And as it turned out, Barney was also a director of Signature Bank, which was eventually closed down, or rather quite recently closed down. So writing a book and then seeing it come to life is one of the amazing pleasures of being an author and someone who thinks about the future of finance. I want to take three themes that I've developed in my book for this presentation. The personalization of finance, from platforms to personalization, and the idea of the mass amateurization of finance. Now, what do I mean by the personalization of finance? You know, if I asked all of you in the audience what you think personalization means, bankers in general think that they've always understood what personalization means. Personalization means taking your product and making the customer feel like that product was meant for him. But I've taken it many layers beyond our prosaic understanding of what personalization means. In my book, actually the book cover has the visual or the picture of an ice cube, and there's a reason for that. Just remember this, or you would understand what I'm saying here, that ice used to be a commodity that you saw out of the lakes and out of the glaciers in North America and North Europe and so on. And it used to be put, even today, out of the glaciers of the North Pole, ice is transported over thousands of miles to get to their destination. And in North America, sawn out of the lakes of Boston, put on horse-drawn carriages, taken on into the cities far away, and then used for cooling a drink or keeping fish fresh. And can you imagine what it used to be, that ice used to be such an inefficient way of being transported in the past? And how do we generate ice today? We generate it in a refrigerator. And we generate it when we want it, how we want it, and to whatever extent that we want to use ice. And what made that difference? In the creation of refrigeration technology, it was a synthetic chemical called chlorofluorocarbon. And what chlorofluorocarbon does is it absorbs heat and enables water to freeze into ice. And then I asked, can this happen in finance? It already is happening in finance today. When you think about cryptocurrencies and what they do in its ability for people to transact directly with each other without having an intermediary, that's what is happening in finance that sort of mirrors what happened in the transportation and the creation and the manufacture of ice. Just imagine the money that you have in your pocket would have gone swirling around the world twice, subject to interest rates, exchange rates, bank charges, security costs, holding costs, and all kinds of factors that are well beyond your control before it reaches you. That's what money is today. That's what banking is today. And what we want to make banking or finance possible is to make it increasingly within the control of the user of finance for the purposes which it was created. So I asked, what is the CFC of finance? What's the chlorofluorocarbon of finance that will make it personalized? And there are 4 elements. Firstly, identity. The ability to know that you and I know each other even if we've never met each other, that we can validate our identities. Secondly, value. That is something of value that is transmitted between 2 people. Thirdly, verification, that we are able to verify each other without needing an intermediary of sorts. And fourthly, data, information that we're transmitting between each other. Now, if all these components are satisfied by technology, and there are people working on each one of these components, identity, that is, how is it that we can create a digital identity? And a digital identity is different from a physical identity. A physical identity is me. It can be validated or accentuated by biometrics and so on. But a digital identity introduces a whole range of new factors that we now need to take into account. We can have multiple identities. We can have identities with different characteristics for different purposes and so on. And so the technology is evolving on the identity space in order to be able to enable us to interact with each other. Now, value. How do we transfer value? Cryptocurrencies do that, stable coins do that, central bank digital currencies do that. You're able to tokenize value. Verification. Today we are limited by technologies such as dual factor verifications and so on. But in the network world, verifications are made possible by the network itself, where the more people interact with each other, the clearer a perspective that we get about each other. And information, the data that we carry as we interact with each other. Now, just bearing in mind what I just said about what the personalization of finance means in the future, we now take a look at where we are and where we are going. A lot of what is discussed in this conference has to do with putting digital banks on platforms. And I say this in my book, that we are actually coming to the end of the platform era. Now, I tell my friends in the platform era that they need to remember that there was a time when Facebook and even Google, when they started, they were native to desktop technology. And then when the newer players came on, players like WeChat and Alipay and Ant Financial and so on, they were more native to mobile technologies. And I remind my friends in the original platform iterations, the Facebook players, that there was a time when Facebook missed a step because he didn't know how to make that transition into the mobile world. And today, we are now just about to enter the post-mobile world. Just when you think that the mobile device that you carry is the one device that you need, the one all-powerful device on which you carry value, you carry information, you carry identity, we're now getting into a phase where we will become device independent. where the mobile device is not the only device that carries value and information and data that we can transact with each other. So we are in a process of transition. The Internet of Things is disintegrating the element of mobile, and the onset of the metaverse and virtual reality is creating whole ranges of new technologies that we need to come to terms with. Last year was the first year that Facebook started to lose customers. And even as we talk about TikTok, for example, TikTok is like the first, you can look at it as at the tail end of the platform players or the starting end of the metaverse universe that is going to come to fruition over time. And as we see these transitions taking place, we need to start taking stock of what the technologies will look like in the future. Now, something that needs to be understood more clearly at the back end of this transition from platforms to personalization is that there is a big difference between Web 3 and Web 3.0. If you Google and ask for an explanation of this difference, many sources of information will tell you that there is no difference. There is a big and fundamental difference that we need to understand. Web 3 is a Gavin Wood creation. It's a blockchain inspired idea. Web 3.0 is a Tim Berners-Lee creation, and I had the chance to interact with both of them. And Tim Berners-Lee wants to see that the new technologies like blockchain and the metaverse is carried on the World Wide Web, and it continues to give power to the World Wide Web. The Web 3 idea is to see a disintegrating of the platform universe into blockchain, where blockchains interacting with each other becomes the new Wi-Fi, right? And we see a huge war underway between these two technologies. The advent of ChatGPT gives a spark to the Web 3.0 universe because it makes the platform technology or the platform perspective looks renewed and refreshed for another generation. But there's a lot happening in the blockchain world that is empowering the blockchain universe as well. Because the way in which we understand Wi-Fi on the platform perspective is that all of us provide our data to be put on the platform and for the platform players to profit from our relationships. But we are now entering a world where through legislation and through culture, many of us are claiming ownership of our data back again. And the blockchain technologies are enabling us to do that more than the traditional HTTP universe. Now, something else in there is that the blockchain world is essentially permissionless, and the HTTP world is essentially permission, meaning that it builds based on transacting on a platform, right? Now, what does this mean in practical terms? In practical terms, the platform world is becoming inherently unprofitable. In fact, the fact that you're on a platform does not guarantee profitability at all. Technology, by definition, destroys prices, commoditizes products, and it sets a low barrier of entry for the next player. In other words, if you can do it, somebody else can do it too. So therefore, the value of a relationship is on something other than platforms. I like to say this, that the experiences that we've had in finance built on platform technology are actually based on a number of untruths. Every time I hear that somebody wants to set up a platform business in finance because he wants to engender more financial inclusion, I put up my hand and I say, financial inclusion is a lie. Why? Because the whole model of the platform universe is to onboard millions of users and then monetize them. And if the perspective is to monetize the poor, then I think that platforms are not doing what they're supposed to do in democratizing finance. In fact, I did a check that a lot of the financial inclusion credit businesses today are still charging about 30% interest on transactions to poor people that used to be charged by the microfinance or microcredit players in the physical space in the past. What we do need to come to terms with is that whether it's the platform model or the blockchain permissionless model, the most important thing that we need to come to terms with is that digital asset access is now a human right. It's a human right alongside water and the air that we breathe. I looked at the top platform players today, which have a financial element to them. Alipay in China, GCash in the Philippines, and these are ranked according to the level of profitability. And what we, in our research team's analysis, the conclusion that we came to was that the success of a platform player is dependent on how greenfield it is to traditional banking that exists in the economy. And that is why the US is sometimes the last economy to be able to embrace platform finance because the domination of the traditional banks are much stronger there. Products, usually payments, and linked to some kind of social or business ecosystem or supply chain and scale. Once you become the largest player in your ecosystem, you take all of the profitability that's possible in that marketplace, and then the rest, will never be able to catch up with you. In the same way, when we look at the global digital-only banks, not all of them are profitable. In fact, only a third of all the global digital banks in the world today are profitable. And why are they profitable? If they operate in a market where traditional banking is not well established, if they have products, usually credits, if they are linked to small business supply chains, and if they have scale. So the idea of being successful on the platform economy is not a given. Now, the third idea that I want to share with you is the idea of the mass amateurization of finance. And here is where the personalization of finance needs to be understood for you to make an incredibly important breakthrough in your thinking of what personalization means. The idea of the mass amateurization of information was promoted originally by a social scientist, Yochai Benkler, in the 1990s, and I'm borrowing that into finance. And the whole idea of mass amateurization is where the end user feels like he is an important part of the process of defining and creating the product that he uses. Now, in this aspect, I'd say that banking missed a beat. When the API revolution started to kick in, the large software houses, Microsoft, Adobe, take any one of them, went into full gear in incorporating all of their users, all of their developer communities in defining how they want to use the platforms that were created. But what did banks do? Banks closed off their data pools and treated the API developers almost as if they were suppliers. They were patch solution vendors. created to solve an existing legacy problem in the bank. And banks still have this idea that the data that sits inside the bank is more important than the data that exists outside. And the banking industry never embraced the idea that the value of the information today is outside the institution. Now, what does that mean? It means that your most important API user is going to be a 6-year-old girl who's going to decide for herself how she wants to interact with your institution, and that she has access to an API that helps her define how the relationship should be and how the product proposition should be designed and packaged. And banks, in having missed the opportunity to create that culture of enabling end users to build their own APIs, are now really far behind in the new revolution that's taking place, where some of these APIs are actually built on the back of cryptocurrencies. The beauty of cryptocurrencies is not that Bitcoin went up to $65,000. The beauty of cryptocurrency is that you can design and create your own cryptocurrency. I can create my own cryptocurrency. Anyone in this room can create your own crypto and put it up for it to be accepted by your counterparties as a form of transaction. And the other magic of cryptocurrencies is the amount of talent that is going into creating applications around any one of them. And that's what you want to see in the finance industry, and that's what is not happening today. So even as the march towards personalization is taking place inevitably driven by technology, the business mindset hasn't wrapped itself around the new realities that are coming into shape. I think I should stop there for now. I've given you a lot to think about, and if you have time, you can ask a couple of questions. I hope that what I had to say is of value. Oh, sorry, I do have one more thing to say here, which I think that you'll find interesting. Now, in 2017, I gave a speech, and I said that if the product doesn't change, nothing changes in finance. And the product that I used to illustrate this was the story of Kodak, which in 1995 was the co-inventor of the idea of the digital film. By the year 2000, Sony introduced the cybershot. 2007, the advent of iPhone, and 2010, Kodak went into liquidation, bankruptcy. And then, as I was writing my book 2 years ago, I applied my mind to ask, what is the one product in banking that has to change if this industry was to embrace the future? And the product that I thought about was the deposit product. Think about this. Today, we don't just have banks is growing at about 20 to 30% a year, okay? And there will come a time when it is going to be all encompassing. Now, in the good old days, bank deposit meant the lowest, cheapest cost of funding. And today, after I had published my book, what happened? We saw that the banks with the strongest deposit base were exactly the ones that got into trouble in the US. Silicon Valley, Signature Bank, First Republic, and there are many more on account of not being able to match the asset liability mismatch because of higher interest rates. The deposit business is crumbling. And what is it coming into? When we look at what the digital wallet players are able to do with the deposit business, is that the value proposition is no longer about giving you a good interest rates on your deposit. The value proposition is on the utility of your deposit, plugging it into all kinds of other applications, many of them in the digital space. So I'm saying to the people in the deposits business, there will come a time when every bank might actually end up competing in stable coins because the stable coin in business model is designed to give you access into the digital world. Okay, and with that thought, I will leave it there. I think I've given you a lot to think about. Okay, and if there are one or two questions, I'm happy to take them.